Hey guys, welcome back to another 3D printing video. Today we're going to be checking out the SUNLU S9 Plus, which is a pretty large printer that has a lot of great and unique features. So in this video we're going to unbox it, set it up, and do some prints. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let's get started. Alright, so this is the box that the S9 comes in. It is quite large. And here we have some information. This is an FDM printer, S9 Plus, the package size, the weight of the printer, and then the total weight with everything. And as we open it up, we can see we got pretty thick, white, soft foam. And this is what we see inside. So everything is well packed. On the top here, you guys can see we have a filament dryer, which you put your filament in and it heats it up. And what's unique about this is that it plugs in straight into the printer. So yeah, this is a really cool addition. So here we have something a little bit random. It says Teflon tube spare. So some kind of little spare Teflon tubes to something. On the side here we got two braces, and these are supports for the printer. Really like how they included this for this large format. So in here we have a couple bags. There's quite a few things in there. Kind of hard to see, but we'll go through this in a second. We got a spool of filament. Looks like about 250 grams in white PLA. Nice that they include a spool. So let's go ahead and pull out the upper portion of the printer. Okay, so yeah, it's zip tied completely together with the base. So I guess they want you to kind of pull the whole thing out together. So let's go ahead and do that. And that's everything for the box. And again, very well packed and protected. All right. So you guys can see it's all zip tied here, and we got foam in between. But before we cut all that loose, let's go ahead and check out what's in these bags. So in the first bag, we got the spool holder, and it is all plastic. It looks like you do have to put it together, which this piece inserts, and then a bolt will hold it. Not too bad, but you know, considering that it does come with the filament box, you probably don't even need the spool holder. So we also get the power plug, and this is the US type, and our user/manual guide that kind of unfolds like this, and it starts with step 1 of unpacking, all the parts included, and then assembling it, and basically putting it together. So yeah, looks pretty good. I do wish it was a book more than this kind of flip out, because it's a little harder to use, but still not a big deal. You can just flip the pages around as you go. Pretty simple. Actually is kind of like a book anyways. But yeah, laid out very nice and straightforward. So the next bag has quite a few more things in. So we do get a spatula, and it is somewhat sharpened. We get some cutters. Very nice. A couple open-ended wrenches. This is for the nozzle. And here we have a 10 and 8 millimeter USB cable to connect from the printer to the computer. A few zip ties, including very small ones and also very long ones. We also get a clean out needle, a USB adapter to micro SD card, which the ones included is a scan disk 8 gig. And we also get 5 baggies that are all labeled 1 through 5. Looks like it's part of the step build of hardware for 1 and 2, and also 3. 4 has a set of Allen wrenches, and 5 looks like extra parts, a couple bolts, and a nozzle. All right, so let's go ahead and cut these zip ties. And if you do want to reuse them, a little tip here is if you cut them close to the end where they go in, you can just pull out the extra piece and then still have a pretty long zip tie to use for something else if you did want to do that. And we got 3 zip ties on this other side. All right, so now this should just all come apart. And yeah, very nicely packed here. Lots of foam. and it looks like it'll just stand right up to where it needs to mount. So starting with step 4, you guys can see we're going to install a couple bolts which are going to go on the side. Actually really hard to see, but there's 2 bolts that go from the inside into the channels. And then for step 5, with the 4 bolts that go underneath into this channel from beneath. So let's grab number 1, and they do have quite a few bolts in here. It looks like a full set of 6. I'm going to need only 2. We'll also go ahead and open number 4 so we can grab an Allen wrench that we need. So on the inside of the channel, maybe you guys can see there's a bracket here. So there is thread behind there that'll screw into the channel. So you just line it up and grab the bolt and go ahead and screw it in. So these are braces for more strength. I'm not going to tighten it yet. I'm just going to snug it just a little bit. And you guys can't see this, but we got exactly the same bolt that goes on this side from the inside. So again, we're not going to tighten it yet. And the reason for that is because we want to install our bottom bolts first before we tighten the sides. And that's going to be in bag 2. There are 4 bolts. I'm going to need the large Allen wrench. And so to make it easier for myself, I'm going to lift up this back corner and put the spool under there to kind of prop it up a bit. And now I can easily reach to the bottom here with my bolts. But you can just, go off the end of the table or something to make it easier for yourself. But yeah, simple as that, guys. We're just going to run them down. The only thing you got to watch out for is these wires here underneath. They're kind of in the way. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. And we are just running them down and not tightening them. And you'll guys see in a second why. Let's go ahead and flip to the other side. And we'll do the same thing here. Alright, so those are run down but not tightened. And the reason we don't tighten anything yet is because we want to run down the x-axis with the Z-wads here all the way down. And you want to spin both of them at the same time here. I'm just doing the coupler because if you spin one, the other one won't spin because they are not tethered. We want the spacing between this channel and this one to be as close as possible to our mounting here. So because we lowered it, we know now that we're very close to where it needs to be because it's naturally micro adjusting itself. Since our printer does spend most of its time down here when it starts to print and prints. So yeah, now we can tighten everything. These inner bolts here and also the ones underneath. So I'm going to do underneath first and then the sides. So now I'm just going to do the other side and we'll go to the next step. So for step 6, they want us to check the voltage setting underneath here. And if you want to go ahead and do that, you can. It's underneath the printer on the back side here. But I'm going to do that a little later in the video when we go through the printer. So for step 7 and 8, we're going to be installing the spool holder on the top. And it's quite simple. We're going to put the 2 pieces together and then mount it here on the top of the printer. And the bolts that we need are from the number 1 pack, which the rest of them are. And so the spool part, we'll just insert anywhere here. Has a couple of wings there or slots that slots in. Doesn't really matter which ones you pick. Push it in there a little bit. And then we're going to grab a bolt and start it on there. And we're going to keep tightening it and it'll pull it in. Snug it up. And that's how the spool goes onto the bracket. So here you guys can see we have 1, 2, 3 holes. And we are looking at the front of the printer. So the spool holder will go in on this side here where the extruder is. And so there's a couple bolts on the top and there's threads in the channel. So that makes it really easy. And then one here in the front. And just like that, our spool holder is on. So for step 9, we're going to be putting in the braces. And then we're pretty much done. And also down here, we have the Filament Dryer Box connection. So the braces are not very hard to install, but you definitely want to do it the right way. So on my printer, we have this bracket here pre-installed already on top. And the one on the bottom, which is the bolt, is also there. But it does look like we need to loosen it. But yeah, hopefully you guys can see this printer is quite large. But yeah, we're going to take one of the ends and screw it to the bottom here onto the bolt. And you want to go reasonably deep, at least half an inch or so, maybe like 10 millimeters or so, or however much that is. And then on the top, we're able to unscrew the bolt up there and line it up with the threads. So we're going to need our number 3 package, which has the 2 bolts, 1 on each side. So once you get that lined up, we can go ahead and screw the bolt in. So you want to be careful not to stress this, like don't pull on it. Like if it's not going in easy, go ahead and adjust it where it lines up perfect because, you can pull on this and it will flex and you don't want to do that. You want it to naturally sit where it wants to and tighten it there. So as long as nothing's stressed and everything is going in easy, we can go ahead and tighten the bolt up here and the bolt down here. Go ahead and snug them up. Then you want to grab your provided open-ended wrench and we're going to lock in these nuts here down to the tube. So just slightly snug them up. Same thing down here, run them up to the tube and then snug it up a bit. And that's just gonna solidify everything and there's gonna be no play in it. And we're gonna do exactly the same thing on this other side. So yeah guys, again, make sure it all lines up perfect. Last thing you want is the frame to be bent on the top and, you know, cause binding and whatnot else. And that's it, we are done with the bracing. All right, so for the last thing, we're gonna be installing this dry box, and these are really nice. I do have a separate one just like this that actually plugs into the wall. So yeah, if you're not, you know, using a dryer already, you might wanna look into this. But what's really unique about this is that it's made to plug into the printer. As you guys can see, there's a cord that comes out, and on the side of the printer, there's a plug here. Actually, the cap is off of it, so you can cap it if you're not gonna use it. But yeah, you simply just plug into it. It's got a locking washer. And now the filament dryer is powered right off the printer. And also I'm wondering if there's going to be any kind of functionality between the two from the display. We'll see about that. That should be pretty awesome. And it actually appears that it is, because right here we just have a sticker. There's normally a screen here. So they integrated this thing pretty nicely. But yeah, you just simply put your spool filament in there, and then you feed it out the hole here on the top, and then you just line it up into the filament detector and then through the extruder into the hot end. And what's awesome is that it's going to keep the filament dry as it's printing. If you live in humid areas, this is a very big plus. But yeah guys, pretty much we are finished assembling the printer. So I'm going to clean up everything here a little bit, and we'll take a closer look at the S9 Plus. But before that, I just remembered that we need to check our rollers and also take a look at our belt and just make sure everything is running smooth. So on this design, we have 3 rollers on each side, 2 on the outside, and then 1 roller on the inside of the 2 channels that the bed rides on. So this is a pretty good design, as it does have a pretty wide, stable rail to ride on. All we want to do right now is check, make sure we don't have wobble, which we do. So that means that we are loose. Now the 2 rollers on the outside of the channel are stationary, and then the one on the inside is adjustable. So it's actually, guys, really hard to see, and I don't even know how I'm going to be able to show you this, but for this, it might be better to lay the printer down on its side. And I'm going to go ahead and unhook our filament dryer there. And so maybe from here, you guys can see a lot better what we're working with. So these are stationaries, and then these are adjustable. We are loose right now, and it's actually mostly on this one here. The other one is a little loose. Yeah, it still needs to be tightened. But let's go ahead and tighten this one. And so there's a citric nut behind here that you can spin. And actually, this one's kind of hard to get to because this is where the belt connects. Or there's a piece of frame there, but it is possible to get to it. So all right, so yeah, I just tightened it a little, and that seems to be just right. So the whole idea here, guys, is that if you hold the whole thing stationary, you should be able to spin the wheel. As you guys can see, I can spin it. It's kind of like a little burnout. So it has to be, you know, tight enough where it's not wobbling, but loose enough where you can still spin this. So any wheel should be able to spin. As long as you can do that, this is a perfect adjustment here. And same thing for this side. So we're too loose here, and we need to tighten it up just a bit. So let's go ahead and try that. So the tricky part here is that when you tighten this one changes a little bit. So you got to be careful not to over tighten something. As long as everything is feeling pretty good, and you guys can see all the rollers are spinning, so they're all touching, this should be good right here. So yeah, I'm happy with that. And we literally have no wobble at all. And on the front of the printer here, looking down, you guys can see this is where our idler pulley is. What's really cool about it is the way they designed this tensioner. So the tensioner actually has 2 knobs, and you can actually, adjust it to where the pulley is centered on the belt there. So if you move this around, you guys can see our pulley's a little bit to one side. So if we tighten this up just a little bit, it should want to go over, and sure enough it did, and that looks like perfect right there. So if you need to tighten it, you'll just turn them the same way, and then you can micro adjust it to be centered on the pulley. Yeah, and also guys, I'm noticing this printer has a really large belt. And here we are looking at the back, and our Y-axis here goes to the stepper motor. Also, everything looks nicely lined up there on the gear. So the next part we want to check is this X-axis. So this is quite important to get this one right, and I think we might be a little loose on this one. So we got 2 stationaries on top and adjustable on the bottom. So let's go ahead and tighten it up just a little bit. Maybe back off just a smidge. There we go. And that feels just right. So it needs to be nice and smooth, and your wheel should turn easily like we talked about. Now we do have some rollers here on the outside, and then one on the inside that run around these channels here. These you normally don't want to mess with at all, but if you do need to adjust them a little bit, you can. The eccentric nuts are on the inside. Sometimes with these outer rollers, you can't get them perfect for whatever reasons, so as long as you're close enough, don't worry about it, because we do have dual Z-axes, so everything is very stable going up and down. But yeah, that's pretty much it, except for we also want to check the belt tension here on the X, and mine is way too tight, so we do have an adjuster here. Go ahead and loosen it all the way down and then tighten it just a little bit. And so for the belts, you know, you don't want to be too tight, but also no slop. So looser is better, but be careful with being too loose, I guess. So yeah, and you can check these as you print and adjust them a little bit more or a little less, the tightness, to see, you know, if you get better print quality. But yeah, that's pretty much it on the adjustments. And so far, overall, pretty quick with the assembly and not too hard to adjust everything. All right, so let's take a closer look at this printer. As you guys can see, it's quite large and takes quite a bit of room here, especially with the dryer box next to it. This is a large format printer, so keep that in mind, as you will need quite a bit of space for it. So starting here on top, you guys can see we installed this plastic spool holder. And if you are going to use this, your filament will go on there and then travel here to the filament detector and then out the extruder to the hot end. So we got 20/20 channel here, 20/40s on the sides going all the way down. And then I really appreciate, especially for the size printer, these braces. So looking from the back side, what it looks like, you guys can see we have dual Z-axes. They kind of got this little rubber piece around on top with the metal bracket, keeps it aligned. And going down from there, I definitely like that they included a metal extruder. This is so much better than the plastic ones. We have the filament detector here with the sticker that says press the button to feed it. So it looks like some kind of mechanical feed in, because we do have a button here. And what's really cool is we have these little rollers here that guide the filament into the detector. I'm going to go ahead and pull this sticker off. Everything's metal here on the brackets. Wires are nicely routed. Our X-axis motor this way, and we can see our belt there with the gear. Going down from there, we got our Z-axis motor with the couplers. And speaking about the Z-axis, guys, they are not tethered together or synchronized. And also, both of the motors have to move at the same time as you go up and down, or, you know, it could skew a little bit back and forth. But we'll see that once we print something spiralized, you know, all the way up. But yeah, we pretty much got the same thing here on the other side. Looking down here, we have the Y motor, the Y end stop switch. And you guys can see the rails that the bed rides on. So the whole bottom frame is kind of open design. We do have a nice little plate back here, kind of cleans it up, and 4 large squishy feet on each corner. On the bed, we do have strain relief, and the wiring does go up in here and then underneath. Flipping back to the front, you guys can see on this corner, we have the X-axis end stop switch, and on the other end, belt tensioner. So from our extruder, we got the wiring and the PTFE tubing going to our hot end. The hot end assembly is encased in this plastic cover. We got the parts cooling fan here on the side and our heat break fan in the front. So looking underneath, we can see our nozzle heat block. It is insulated, and also we do have a VL touch there for the out of bed level. Going down to the bed, it is a magnetic mat that's very flexible, and I really like these, especially for large format, because when you print something large, it'll be very easy to peel it off. And we got measurements in centimeters, which could be maybe helpful. So under the build plate, we have the magnetic sheet that magnetizes the build plate to it. And our bed is aluminum. It is heated and insulated, as you guys can see there. We got nice quality springs and 2 adjustable knobs. I guess after you adjust it, you can lock it in where it doesn't spin as easy. And you guys can see our inner workings there with all the rollers. The frame itself is quite beefy underneath. And we have a pretty large belt here, as you guys saw earlier with our adjustment. And over here we have a sticker that says to not forget about your voltage settings, and we're going to do that here in a second. And you definitely don't want to forget about this, so maybe you want to go ahead and check that before you do anything else. But going over here, you guys can see we have a little cover. I'm kind of curious what that's for. Let's quickly peek under there and see what it could be. All right, well, it's actually all of our connections to the power supply. So this is our mains coming in here and going to the supply there, and that they have a cover here for that. All right, so I'm gonna put that back. So going to the front, we got a big sticker here that shows us all the specifications of this printer, and you guys can see that our build volume is 310 by 310 by 400 millimeters. So yeah, quite a large print volume. 350 watts power supply, and the weight of the printer. And here we have lots of cautions and contact, things like that. We also have a code here for a user manual. And all the way on this side, we have the screen, and it is almost flat. It's a little bit of an angle, but mostly you got to be looking down at it to see it. So yeah, it should be pretty good when you're standing over the printer. There is a protector in there, and it looks like it's underneath the screen, as they do not want to come out. Oh, maybe I'm wrong about this one. It's coming out pretty easily. Okay. But it is 4.3 inches in size, which is pretty reasonable here. It should be pretty easy to use. Going down from there, we got our USB port to connect to a computer if you want to do that. And also, this is where we're going to insert our micro SD card to bring the files in to the printer. Going to the right side, you guys can see we got a fan here for the electronics inside and some cooling vents, and not too much over here. On the left side though, we got something pretty interesting, which is a little drawer for storage, and I went ahead and put some stuff in there. So yeah, I really like how they include this pretty reasonably sized storage here on the side. Very cool. And then beside that, we have the plug for our filament dryer. So let's go ahead and reconnect that. And it's as simple as plugging it in and then locking the washer in. And that's pretty much it, guys. And then we got the filament dryer box here. So there's a wire that comes out, and there's no buttons or anything. This dummy button here you see doesn't do anything, and there's nothing really here to push. And on the inside, we got some padding, and your spool goes on here, and it does roll on these bearing rollers. That's very nice and smooth. And that whole bottom piece there, it heats up, and you guys can see it's got like a temperature warning. And I love the cap that it's clear. You can see, see your filament churning. So I went ahead and put the printer on its side so we can kind of see what's under here. So we got some venting. You guys see the feet there. Then most importantly is on this side, we have the on and off switch, our input port for the power. It is fused. And if we go down here to the middle, maybe you guys can see this is where we're going to change our voltage. So mine is set on 240. Kind of hard to see, but I'm going to go ahead and click it to 120, or I guess 115 is where it's at. So depending on where you live, make sure you check that and switch it. So I'm pretty excited to power this thing on, but before we do, it looks like that this cover here comes off. We got a bolt here, there, and 3 little ones on the bottom, and maybe we can see what's inside. So let's go ahead and see if this front fascia here comes off. All right, let's see here. Okay, so it is moving, and it's probably not intended for you to take it off, but it is possible. Our screen is connected here to the face, so yeah, it looks really nice. We even have a little micro SD card slot right here. Yeah, here we see the main board. It is a SUNLU S9 version 1.0. Yeah, they're using their own main board to control this thing. So everything seems to be very nicely organized, and all the connectors are glued. The stepper drivers are integrated, and they are heat sinked. And there's a little fan here on the side that blows on the board. I like all the connections here. They're crimped and nicely routed. And on this side here, we have our toolbox storage in its own little housing. But yeah, this is what it looks like under the front here. And we won't see this at all, but our power supply is actually deeper under there. In any case, I'm going to put this back on and we'll power on the printer. All right, so everything's back like it needs to be, and I got the power cord plugged in right here. I'm going to leave the camera at this angle as we power it up, because you will be able to see the screen much better like that, since it's pointing up basically. But in any case, let's hit the power switch, which is right here, and the best way to access it is probably from the side. All right, so let's switch it, and there we go. And wow, that powers up very quick. Literally a couple seconds and it's up. I do like that. So even where the camera is at that angle, the screen's probably not optimal viewing because you gotta look down more straight at it. But what I can see, it looks really good, and the resolution is quite good also. And this is what we're greeted with here. And so down here we have nozzle and bed temperatures. So let's click on settings. All right, so I do like how that always stays there. And we can see the design, it's like these hexagons, I guess. And we got temperature. Let's go ahead and hit PLA to preheat it, and it goes to 210 on the nozzle and 60 on the bed. And the fan actually kicked on the hot end. So here we have moving axes in different directions, so you can manually do that here. The dryer box, so this is where we're going to control it. Let's go ahead and preheat it also, and you can set the temperature here. Okay, 55. Oh wow, this is really cool. It actually shows you the current humidity, which is 56%. Not too high, but pretty up there. So let's go ahead and start. And so now our filament box will be preheating also, and this is the time remaining here, and then we can add or subtract to it. Okay, so it actually went to 1 day. All right, so yeah, there's no limit to this thing so far. Okay, did it stop? No, it keeps going. Okay, so it looks like we maxed it out at 4 days and 3 hours. Oh, there's no reset for this. Or is it? Let's see if we start and then pause. Okay, so yeah, if you start it and pause it, it resets it to 6 hours. So we'll keep it at that. Push start and let that preheat. Here we can control our extruder. We can feed it or retract it. And here we can choose how much. And also we can PLA or ABS preheat from here. So here we have leveling. We're going to do that in a second. Disable steppers. Language. So it looks like we have Chinese and English. And we can reset everything. Let's go back. The print button here will read our SD card, which we don't have in there yet, and info about the printer and how to contact the company. So I'm going to be going to leveling here. Let's go ahead and press it. And sure enough, the printer moves. So it's homing right now. And you guys probably can't see any of it. So it is setting up for level. Now, since we do have knobs underneath, I think we need to manually level it first. But let's see what kind of menu it presents to us. All right, so the BL Touch is working. Alright, so it does give us a lot of information here. So the first thing on the side here is we have the Z-axis offset, so you can go a little up or a little down, and you can also home it. Then here we have AUX leveling and platform measure. So the AUX is our manual leveling, and the platform measure is going to be using our BL Touch and probing the bed 16 times, and then setting the offsets, and these are the little numbers you see here. So first you want to do AUX leveling, and then we'll let it auto level. Alright, so we're back down, and you're probably not going to see the screen here at all. I'll just tell you what I'm doing. Hopefully it'll make sense. So you're going to need some kind of piece of paper. I'm just going to use this Post-it note, and we're going to click on AUX leveling. You guys probably can't see that maybe, but we got 5 points on the bed that we can click, and number 1 is in the middle, which we do not need right now, or maybe at all. So we'll start with number 2, which goes to this corner here. And we're going to use our paper here to go between the nozzle and the bed. And we're definitely too low, so we need to tighten it up. So you do want to make sure that your bed is preheated. And so this is pretty much just like a normal manual adjustment. Actually, guys, that was too high for that side. I'm going to run it down a little bit here. Kind of go down on the bed because it seems to be bottoming out into the build surface. Now, one thing to note about these knobs is that you do have to unscrew the bottom knob in order to adjust. If you tie them together, it doesn't really do much. So loosen the bottom nut and then use the upper nut to adjust it. All right, so let's go to the next one. All right, so we're gonna go around a few times. So I'm basically pushing 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm gonna keep pushing that as we go around. So basically making a full circle here, and I'm gonna do that about 3 times or so, get it pretty close. So the closer it is, the better. And as you change one corner, you know, another corner will also change. So yeah, I would recommend going at least 3 or 4 times to get it pretty close. That way the out of bed leveling won't have to compensate so much. And because this bed is so large, a small adjustment on this side will affect the other end a lot. All right, so I think that's pretty close. Yeah, it is, or where we need to be. And let's go ahead and click 1. To go to the center, and this is not important to check this because the out of bed leveling will kind of compensate for it, but it's actually pretty much what it needs to be. So the thing that you want to do next is lock all your knobs. So hold the top knob and spin the bottom to kind of lock them together. But make sure you don't, spin it too much because you're gonna, knock the level off. So hold the top knob and tighten the bottom knob to the top one so it locks it in. All right, and we're good to go. So on the screen here is actually prompting us to go to out of bed leveling next. So let's click that, and it should probe the bed and do the 16-point measure. And as it's taking measurements, it's changing these numbers of the offset on the points. And so far we're looking really good, no more than about 0.2 off. All right, so it's finished. Let's go ahead and click on home. All right, and now we're gonna adjust our Z-axis offset. So we're using the piece of paper here. So it looks like I'm too low, I need to go up. So I'm gonna click up on the Z. And it does go up 0.1 millimeters at a time. All right, so go back down here, and that's pretty good. So once it gets tight, since I have a pretty thin sheet of paper here, I'm gonna go 1 up from there. So depending on your paper, if you're using a thick one, you wanna be, pretty tight. But if you're using something pretty thin like I am, once it gets tight, then you just wanna go 1 up from there. So, and that should be perfect. And we should be done. So I'm gonna go ahead and home it again, just to make sure everything's good. And we're good. So I'm just gonna go back. I'm gonna raise it up out of the way here. So yeah, guys, and that's how you level the bed. So for the next part, let's go ahead and load our filament. And by the way, this thing is hot now. And I'm gonna use this pretty low quality filament that I have, and we'll see if this filament box can dry it up, because it does have a lot of moisture in it. So I'm gonna grab my snippers. I'm gonna cut the filament on an angle, that way it's easier to feed. So putting it in the dryer box is pretty simple. I'm just gonna open it up, put our spool in there, and you guys can see it rolls really easy. So it's literally a bearing roll. But yeah, we're gonna feed our filament through the top of the acrylic cover here. And there's like another little rubber plug here that goes on the bottom. And all it does is it kind of plugs up that hole there. But yeah, the filament will just run out from the top. And so we're gonna set the box reasonably close to the detector here. If you guys remember, we have a button on the back that we need to push. So if you don't push it, it doesn't go through. So you do have to push that to make it through. Now once it's through, it goes through easy. Like you can pull it through. So yeah, after that, we're just going into the extruder assembly. So it is a little bit harder than usual to push it all through. I guess we can push it through here. Yeah, okay. Okay, that's not so bad. Actually goes pretty easily. So there's a lot of things going on. You know, we got the filament box, and then from there into the detector, and then from the detector into the extruder, and then through the PTF tubing into the hot end. And yeah, it's pretty easy to just manually do it. Now you can go into settings and then reload and then put in how much you want. It's got 10 millimeters, and then push feed, and actually it raises and it will extrude 10 millimeters and looks like go back down. All right, cool. But I find it much easier just to manually push it through yourself. All right, so we're pretty much ready to print. Let's grab our little micro SD card that was included. And it plugs in down here, probably upside down. Actually, no, right side up. Look at that. All right, cool. So we're gonna go to print, and sure enough, we have a couple test G codes. So you just click on it and it asks you if you want to print this file. Now it also gives you more options here of auto leveling, fracture detect, and plugging detect. So this printer does have a clog detection also, which monitors the flow of filament. So we're going to leave on that and the filament detector, but we're going to turn off the auto leveling. So we don't want it to auto level every time it starts printing, since we did already auto level it. So we'll turn that off, and then we'll click on yes, and it will start the print. So we're back down. I'm just going to click yes, and it starts, and we do have a new menu, which we'll check out here in a second. So I'm going to zoom you guys in a bit more. Alright, and it starts printing with really no purge or anything, but that's okay because it looks like it's doing good right off the bat here. And you guys can see there that it's boogieing along on its first layer, and that would not definitely be my choice going that fast on the first layer, but in any case, it does look like it's sticking to the bed, and the offset does look to be alright. So let's go ahead and check out what we see here as we're printing. So on the top we got the file name. The printing time since we started has been 2 minutes and 59 seconds. And it's actually counting the seconds, pretty cool. We got the nozzle temperature, what it's at and the target, and also the bed down here. Speed 100% and progress at 0. I'm not sure if you guys can see those little numbers or not. Hopefully that's better because they're pretty fine print on the numbers. In real life, they actually look pretty nice and clean, and again, my angle is not great. If you look more on the top, it's more crisp. So on this side, we have Z compensation, so you can actually adjust that right here, plus and minus. We got minus 2.1 right now. So you can go up and down when you first start printing. Definitely love that option here. And over here we have some hot buttons, which we got eco, low power. Let's see what this eco is, so you can turn that on and off. I'm not sure exactly what that does, but I hope it's not where it turns off the heated bed when it's a few layers up, but I guess we'll leave it on and see what happens. The dryer box, if we click on that, we can adjust that here, and the temperature went down for some reason. Let's go back to 55 here. So the humidity level inside the box is 21%, which is pretty low, and you guys saw there when we first turned it on, it was 55. Go back, and down here we have pause and cancel the print altogether. So yeah, very nicely laid out, and everything is right here at your fingertips. So this seems like a pretty large print because the progress is still at 0, and we are just, I guess, at the bottom of the print, and it's actually quite a large print. Our filament box there is doing great. It's feeding the filament through, and it's all heated up. I really like how the filament detector has those rollers, so even if it goes up high, it rolls it in nicely. So yeah, overall everything looks good, and it's printing away our first test print. So the printer is not too loud printing here. I'm going to get my microphone so you guys can hear it. And earlier when it was going up and down, I could definitely tell the Z-axis was loud. So I don't think the Z-axis movements are silent steppers, but the X and Y do seem to be a lot more quieter. So you can still hear them, but it's just a slight hum. So overall, it is pretty quiet. And we do have a fan running here on the side. The heat break fan is running, which is pretty quiet, but our parts cooling fan is not running at all, unless it's turning on a little bit later in the stage. Well, actually, no, there it goes. It did turn on. So it must be a little bit higher up in the layer count. So it just started to spin, but at this rate, it's still very quiet. I can't even hear it. So overall, I would say, you know, unless things get a lot louder here, it's more quieter than most printers out there. And what's interesting is that we're still on 0% progress, so this is going to be quite a large print. Well, in any case, I'm going to let this print out because it does seem to be looking pretty good so far. And maybe I'll go ahead and print the other one, and we'll see how these turn out. All right, so we printed the 2 test files that were included with the printer. I wasn't expecting to print this thing out. It didn't say what it was, but in any case, it was much larger than I thought it was gonna be. And yeah, it's like a weird looking child thing. Go ahead and look at it up close here. So yeah, as you guys can see, it does not look all that great. Now, part of this is because of the crappy filament that we got. And also I think maybe the way it was sliced. But if you look at the reflections, I mean, the layers are pretty good. The layering that you do see is mostly filament related, I think, but not too great. Since we didn't slice this print, you know, I'm not expecting much out of it. And this is what the bottom looks like, so yeah. So here we have a leaf clover, I guess. And both of these prints did print with this raft, which does pop off pretty easy. So I normally don't like printing with rafts because the bottoms don't look all that great. But yeah, on this one you guys can see it's a little bit better maybe. But again, this filament is pretty much junk, so not great. And the slicing wasn't great either on these. We got gaps and just kind of a low quality print, which is a little disappointing that they give you these kind of prints as test prints. I feel like number one, it should be a little smaller and something maybe a little more, you know, useful in the sense of, you know, checking the print quality of some kind of benchmark. But in any case, this is what we got. So I think to see what this printer is really capable of, we need to slice our own prints. All right, so here we are at the computer. I got the SD card plugged in. Let's go ahead and open it up. So this is what we see. We got a video, looks like assembly quick start guide. So if you want to watch that, that could be quite helpful. Also a video installing the dry box and then the auto leveling. So here we got some kind of PLR file. Our PDF starts with About Us, the SUNLU company. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned yet, but SUNLU actually makes filament. And they've been doing that for a very long time. And as you can see, they feature it here. So yeah, they definitely know a thing or two about printing. So this is actually a products manual, not the manual for assembly on this printer. So just different random products. Here we have some kind of operational document. It says manual maybe. So this is the actual manual. So here we have all the specs of the printer, TMC 2208 drivers. So yeah, basically this is the digital copy of the manual that we saw. Here we have a software file with Cura and another file called Fronterface, slicers and whatnot else. Not too sure what all this is all about, but I think it's maybe their own slicer, but yeah, I'm going to be using Cura since I already have that and what I'm used to. And then we have our test G-code 1 and 2. And also another thing I wish they'd put on these G-codes is the amount of time it takes to print these. Kind of like in the name, test 1, let's say 15 hours, test 2, 6 hours or whatever it takes. Would be nice to know at least what you're dealing with. But yeah, in any case, this is what's on the SD card. Let's go ahead and open the Cura slicer. So we're going to build a profile from scratch. So let's add a printer, click on Not Network. Let's see if SUNLU is in here. And it's not, which is no big deal because we're just going to be doing a basic profile. And normally I use the Creality Ender 3 Pro for everything and just adjust the settings. And you can rename it here to anything you want. So let's call it S9 Plus. Add. So here we're going to put in the parameters 310 by 310 and 400 tall. So yeah, everything else should be good except for down here where it says G28. We're just going to add G29 right next to it. And this is so it can home correctly. And that's it. Looking good. Let's click next. And this is our build volume here. And it's quite large, as you guys can see. Let's get a little closer to the bed here. So let's go ahead and drop Calibration Cube in there. So if you click on the cube, and on the side here, you can see we have some basic controls. We can move it around. So, but you can just click on it and move it, or you can grab the arrows and move it, or you can type it in here with numbers and millimeters. We can also scale, same way, by dragging it, or just typing it in, and rotate. And below that we have more options. But what's more important is if we click on this area here, and if you guys see these little 3 lines here, if you click on that, make sure you are on advanced. And we're going to go real quick here through some of the settings. So starting from the top here, we got layer height 0.2. Everything looks good here. On the shell, we're going to change the wall count to 3. It'll make our walls nicer. For top layer, we're going to change it to 5. Make sure we don't have any kind of gaps towards the top. On the fill gaps between walls, I like to change this to nowhere, and that's just for testing. You can leave that to everywhere to make sure, you know, there's no gappage in between anywhere, but I like to see where there are gaps when I'm doing my own print. Infill density at 20 is good. Temperature is good at 200. For speed, we're going to print at 50 is what I do everything, except for the first layer. I'm going to turn that down to 15, and the brim we'll do 25, or skirt, depends on what you choose. Retraction 6.5 is good at 25 millimeters. All the cooling is good. Here we have the support button. If you're going to use that, you can adjust all the settings here. And for build adhesion, I like to use skirt, 3 layers around the model, and then it prints it. And you can choose brim or raft. And what you guys saw earlier when we printed it was a raft, which I don't like because it wastes material and time. Brim just prints right to the print, helps it with adhesion, but for this build plate, we don't really need any of that, so skirt is perfect for this printer. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But also down here we have spiralized option, which will print a couple layers and then one layer all around, and we'll print something like a spaceship to see how well it does to the very top of 400 millimeters. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We should be good to slice. So let's click this button here. So it says it's going to take 37 minutes to print out this cube, and if we click on save to removable, it's going to save it straight to the card since we have it plugged in, and you can eject it from here, but we're not going to do that. Let's go ahead and double click or right click and clear the build plate, and we'll also throw the benchy in here and slice it exactly the same way as the cube, and you guys can see it's only going to take an hour and 58 minutes to print this. So let's go ahead and save that, and now we can eject it and go print them out. So yeah, hopefully this little quick setup was helpful, and if you want to learn more about how to use the slicer, there's a lot of great videos out there. Alright, so we got the benchy and the calibration cube. And also I did want to mention the eco mode, or the power saving mode, whatever that was. While you're printing, you can turn it on and off. All that did, that I could tell, is just turn off the screen when it was done. So yeah, I'm not too sure exactly what else it does, but that seems like all I could tell. Alright, so let's start with the calibration cube and see what we got. So here we have the x-axis. Looks pretty good. Show you here in two different light scenarios. Appears to be pretty clean with minimal vibration and pretty much no ghosting. The y-axis, a little bit more vibrations, also pretty good on ghosting, practically very minimal. So yeah, it looks pretty good. We got the X wall and the Y wall. So yeah, very, very nice on the walls. The top also looks great, and the bottom, very nice. And then this magnetic sheet has been working very well. So the benchy's still stuck, and let's see how easy it is. There we go. So the bed is completely cooled off. But yeah, it seems to work very well. When it's hot, it sticks, and when it cools off, it peels off pretty easily. And not only that, we do have the flexibility of it, and that'll definitely peel off any size print. Alright, so the benchy didn't turn out as good as I hoped for, but still not bad. Right down here, it's excellent layer adhesion, very smooth. We did have some under extruding as we started to retract. So I'm thinking that maybe 6.5 is a little too much for this printer. For retraction, we probably should turn it down to maybe 5.5 or something like that, maybe even 5. And that'll help us with the retractions, especially if you guys look there on the walls, we have quite a bit of gaps or under extrusion, which is because of the retraction. So overall, the accuracy seems very good where, you know, it's doing great. Doesn't have to retract much. The layers are very smooth. So the box looks nice. The top looks very good, round, and yeah, very accurate looking overall. And the bottom there. So yeah, very happy with the results with the benchy and the calibration. I'm hoping adjusting the retraction is going to make it even better. But so far, a great start here for the S9 Plus. So I'm going to go ahead and slice a few more prints. We'll print them out, take a closer look at them, and I'll give you guys my final thoughts on this printer. Alright, so these are all the prints that I had time to print, and I have to say they all turned out pretty good, and the printer performed very well, and it was very friendly to use. So we've seen the prints that came with the printer, including this thing here, and also we've seen the calibration cube and the benchy, and they both turned out really well. So let's go ahead and look at this little frog. So this is printed in PLA, 0.2 layer height, 50 millimeters a second, and all the prints are printed in the same slicing we went over. But yeah, you guys can see this frog turned out really good. This is a pretty fine print. This printer did an excellent job putting the layers down, and just very accurate and great adhesion, no stringing. And by the way, I did turn the retractions down to 5.5 and that seems to work just as good. So our Z seam here is on top, you guys can see that. Yeah, other than that, very nice, and all the prints stick to the bed very well. I'm very happy with this build platform. It's very easy to use and very friendly, and everything sticks and comes right off. The next print here, we got a gear, and this is a functional kind of print that is printed all separate, all these pieces, and once it's done you should be able to turn it. I can't do it by hand, so let's go ahead and grab an Allen wrench and we'll stick it in there, and it goes in there perfectly, and let's see how easy it breaks. Okay, so it is somewhat fused, but I can see it wants to go. Surprisingly fused a little more than I thought. Okay, there we go. So it must have had like a Z-seam fuse. But wow, after that, it's very nice and smooth. Let's see if I can take the Allen wrench out. So not much wobble in the gears, and it smoothly turns. Look at that. I mean, you can easily turn this thing. So very, very accurate. So whatever that sticking point was in the beginning broke loose, and we can turn very accurately and easily now. So impressive. So yeah, very happy with the performance of this printer. Next print we got here is a shark, and this is printed in many pieces as it goes up, and then they all kind of combine and they have links and you can kind of move them around, and he even has little feet here or fins. So yeah, pretty cool little print. You know, the bed sticks very well. No issues printing things like this. And if you guys look at the layering, everything looks really good. So as long as you have really good filament, this printer really puts the layers down beautifully. Now we do have a functional mouth here up front. Let's go ahead and see if we can open it up without breaking it, hopefully. Sure enough, we had a little give and it opens up. Look at that. And what's cool is that every tooth printed, because a lot of times on the shark, 1 or 2 teeth end up being crooked because it doesn't print right. But on this printer, it turned out perfect. So that just tells me that the cooling is really good. And yeah, the accuracy is great because that was very easy to pry this thing open. And this printer continues to impress with its print abilities. So the next print I want to show you is this other benchy I printed. Now, the thing about this benchy is that it was printed at 250 millimeters a second. And the reason I decided to try this out, because on one of their promotion pages, I saw that they mentioned something about high-speed printing up to 250 millimeters a second. And I was just like, I don't know how that's going to turn out, but here we have a benchy printed that quick. Now, I think the printer was limiting the speeds anyways, because it didn't feel like it was 250, even though I had 250 on all of the walls, the infill, and so 250 across the board, and I could still see that we were being limited somewhat in speed. And the reason I say that is because this original benchy printed in 2 hours, but the new one printed in just a little bit over an hour. So I would say realistically we're somewhere in 100, maybe 150 millimeters a second on this print. But of course with retractions and everything, you know, that could have slowed it down. But in any case, this is what it looks like. It's actually not bad considering the speed we printed. We do have a little bit of under extrusion, surprisingly not crazy amount of ghosting. It does look a little rough, but still it's all one piece and it's really strong. And our walls actually don't look too bad either. So yeah, overall, if you wanted to print pretty quick, you could, but definitely not its strong point. I would stick to somewhere around 60, maybe up to 80 millimeters a second max. And the last 2 prints, we have the astronaut and his spaceship. So let's look at the astronaut here first. So this turned out pretty good. This print actually has very small surface area to stick to, and the bed stuck very nicely and it all printed out. But yeah, on this filament here, you can really see all of the details, and yeah, overall looks great, to be honest. I can get a little closer here. We do have a little bit of under extrusion and some layering here and there, and a little bit something funny on the bottom and top of the helmet. Yeah, overall pretty good print and looks great. So yeah, very happy with how everything's turning out. Now for this last print, we have Spiralized Mode, which is a few layers on the bottom and then 1 layer all around to the very top. So it did very good until it got to about right here. And because this is Spiralized Mode, once past the first few layers, it counts the last layer that's all the way around to the top as 1 layer. And the problem with that is the buffer fills up very quick and eventually it starts to stutter. So on this printer, the part that starts to give out is the extruder motor. So the extruder towards the top started to skip and not extrude consistently. It was able to finish, but not like it should. So just like the most latest printers, this one also suffers from not being able to print spiralized out of the box. So most people probably won't even print in this mode. And if you do print in this mode, there is some workarounds that are software related that has to do with disabling the power resume function, as that's what fills up the buffer with it's trying to remember where the last point was. And because it keeps constantly going up in spiralized mode, every time it moves a little bit up continuously, it has to remember the last point it was at. And that's what makes it overload and not be able to print correctly. But in any case, it is still stuck on the build platform. And I just want to show you guys how great having this flexible build plate is, as you can easily peel it off by just pulling down on it. And because it's so flexible, it literally should just peel right off, and it does, but this model is so weak it's all cracking. Okay, yeah, so yeah, for some odd reason, the filament got really stuck to this end, and it wasn't because it's too low. It's actually because this filament is really pretty bad, meaning it was really gummy. And if I show you guys the bottom layer, you can see how it was printing. Like, it had so much moisture in it, it was constantly popping. And the reason I wanted to use this filament is because of the dryer box, to see if it can improve it as it prints. And sure enough, after a while, as the filament sat in there, it improved and started printing normal after about 2-3 layers. So unfortunately, we broke this whole thing apart. Yeah, if you guys are gonna print in spiralized mode, this printer is not really capable of that out of the box. But overall, I find the S9 Plus here really intriguing. And a lot of it has to do with that dryer box that comes with it. It's really great to have, especially if you live in more humid climates. It can really keep your filament dry as you're printing. And the way it interacts and how you can control it straight here from the screen is just awesome. So I really love that part about this whole setup. And also everything else is built very well. The frame with the braces is nice and sturdy. There's no wobble on the top. The build volume is excellent with 310 by 310 by 400. We got filament detector with the guide rollers, all metal extruder, BL touch for out of bed leveling. I love the magnetic mat. The bed is heated and insulated. Silent stepper drivers for the X and Y. We have dual motors for Z axis. Also clog detection, which I didn't have to experience yet, but if your nozzle does get clogged, it can sense that and stop the print, so you can fix that before it's too late. And we also got adjustable belts on X and Y. I love this little storage box on the side, very cool. 4.3-inch touchscreen that has good resolution and very straightforward UI. Assembling it and getting started was quite straightforward. So yeah, overall I think it's a great printer with everything that it has to offer. And if you are someone that's just getting started, this would be a great choice. You do get all the modern latest features, which is really nice to see. So if you are interested in this thing, I'm going to leave some links in the description. Check it out. And if you did enjoy this video, then hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, stay tuned. And also check out my 3D printing playlist, which has a lot of printers that I've reviewed, and I'm sure you'll find something interesting there. And as always guys, thanks for watching this channel. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.